Waiting for the feed to go live, and it is live.
Okay.
And I'll start the recording now. And
Jim, do you want to give the countdown?
yeah, Jim can give the countdown.
I will.
All right.
In three, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton.
And I am Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about Dune Messiah, the second book in the original series of Dune books by Frank Herbert. In this book, we find, we join up with Paul and the rest of the Atreides family about 12 years after the events of Dune. And so I think that leaves us probably about 10 years or so after Paul of Dune, if I'm correct, somewhere around there. And the story follows Paul dealing with the stress of having the jihad lasted so long, being a messiah, being an emperor, and the impending doom of his prophecies. And that is the general gist of the story.
I thought Shakespeare wrote this because this is a tragedy.
Oh, that is for sure.
Yeah, it totally follows the Shakespearean formula of tragedy, the fall of grace and the despondency of the hero, and
knowing of the failure way
Well,
ahead of time.
Let's not forget the added stress of Irulan putting the bite on him to make a baby, and even Chani getting into the act, suggesting that he do it too.
Yeah. Talk about pressure, man. This guy
that's pressure.
just could not get away from it. What was your overall impression of this book?
Well, overall impression, you had me do all this research for the bad reviews, and I certainly don't feel that way. I listened to this story, so I'm out running, I'm doing my various things as I listen to it. What I was fascinated for me was not so much, I mean, there's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of telling. There's a lot of philosophizing. Is that even a word? But I'm just
You're the English teacher.
That doesn't mean I know this word. But the idea, there's a lot of philosophy that's kind of girding this, and a lot of discussion of politics and what does it mean to be the savior of mankind, and this whole and to be leading the Fremen and the world. So there's a lot of this discussion going on, and I remember, and so this may have been the first time that I actually read Dune Messiah. I thought I had read 3 books prior to that, many, many years ago, but I didn't remember anything from Dune Messiah. But because I had watched Children of Dune, the miniseries way back, I knew that Paul was blind, and I knew that in Dune he wasn't. So one of the things I was very much interested in was seeing how that event and how that fit into prescience and how that all transpired. And so I was waiting for this to happen throughout the book because I knew it didn't happen in children. So for me, that was the thing that it was short, a very quick read. Right?
Yeah.
It was like 8 or 9 hour book long. It wasn't very long at all.
Right. It's only about 300 pages in the book that I had.
Yeah. That was my thought in it. And, again, I read it back in August and then reread part of it for the podcast tonight. And it was it's definitely more political, not as action oriented. And the plot's a little bit more convoluted than maybe Children of Dune or Dune for that matter. But I did like it. Mm-hmm. It was a good book. Mm-hmm. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I read the book once on my Kindle, and then when we had to postpone recording, I also listened to it going to and from work. And yeah, it went by pretty quick for me. I didn't pick up on the philosophical aspects that you did as much, Scott. I really enjoyed the political intrigue of this book and the story, and just felt horrible when Paul was blinded. And but you know, on the other hand, I was kind of upset by the way that the jihad had gone on and on and on, and Paul, even though he regretted it, just didn't seem to do anything about it, anything to stop it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can I ask you a question, Jim?
Go for it.
Do you think that, so the jihad, by the time we hit this, has been going on for what, 12 years? 12 years of jihad. Do you think at that point, and I think maybe I got the sense as I read through Dune Messiah, do you think at this point Paul felt like he couldn't stop it, like it was out of his control?
Oh yeah, I think that might be the case. But you know, the way this guy was worshipped, a word from him could have stopped it.
I'm not really buying that, Jim.
I think all the way back from Dune, we get the impression that he realizes that the jihad is inevitable. That this path is the path with the least amount of chaos as a result of the jihad. Because if he died or if he went away, the jihad would continue just his name could go into crazy different directions. This way, at least he was guiding it and controlling it to a degree. More like I think they refer to it as like the human mentality was about to explode, and Paul was the catalyst, whether or not he stood atop the wave or let the wave wash over him.
See, I just do not feel that it was under anybody's control, really, because it just seemed like a huge frenzy going on, a killing frenzy, a constant killing frenzy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I just typed into the almighty Google, and I think that this is perhaps a response to why Paul perhaps didn't, and it may be as good of a response as anyone. And there's no who do I credit for this? Probably this is one answer, and it doesn't even have the person's name on it. So if it's you out there, KHW, this goes for you. He says, without going into massive details, because he's being swept along or arguably surfing the tides of history that has been made that has had a lot more directing it to its current course than just him and his actions. He was not just the culmination of the Bene Gesserit breeding program, but the man who stood at the focal point of a lot of social cultural meddling. Much of it you've seen here, such as in the Missionaria Protectiva's planning of the prophecy of a Messiah. But there's a lot more that hasn't been explained yet. Due to his prescience, he has some ability to see where the changes and can direct the flow of history somewhat, but history itself is like a massive tidal wave. The best he can do is to hope to channel it to a desired path. Stopping it simply is not possible. It is too much inertia by this point in the story. He's not choosing how he wants the universe to be, but rather steering it like he's almost an almost out of control ship running before a massive storm. He chooses the best of the options, and he can see with his limited vision. At one point, he describes a view of time as having hills and valleys depending on where he's at any given point. However far he can see is often very limited. And why doesn't he just order them to stop? Apparently in the book it says this. Cheney, beloved, he whispers, do you know what I'd spend to end the jihad, to separate myself from the damnable godhead of the Kizarat forces onto me? She trembled. You have but to command it, she says. Oh no. Even if I die now, my name would still lead them. When I think of the Atreides name tied to this religious butchery, but you're the emperor, I'm a figurehead. When a godhead's given, that's one thing the so-called God no longer controls. A bitter laugh shook him. He sensed the future looking back at him out of the dynasties not even dreamed. He felt his being cast out, crying, unchained from the rings of fate. Only his name continued. I was chosen, he said, perhaps at birth. Certainly before I had much say in it, I was chosen. So that's this guy's take on the idea that he didn't have much control.
Yeah, I agree. And Roland says here in the chat, this is maybe he felt that if he tried to stop it, things would be worse. And that's the impression that I got, that Paul Paul realized that if he were, that's why he couldn't kill himself and he couldn't leave control, because his name was more powerful than him. If he was not there, it would lose focus. Too many power hungry people, and you see that with like Korba and stuff.
Yeah,
people vying for control. So my overall impression of this book, this is probably my least favorite book. However, it's not a bad book. Actually, I'm not going to take that back, because I think I didn't. There was one of the house books I didn't like.
Did you like Paul of Dune less or more?
Paul of Dune left me without. I enjoyed Paul of Dune because it was new, but at the same time, if I had to give an impression, it's like Dune Messiah leaves an impression on me, and it's not necessarily the best impression, while Paul of Dune doesn't leave as much of an impression on me.
Yeah.
You know
So
what
if
I
we
mean?
put like Paul of Dune and we put Dune Messiah into like a boxing ring and have him do like a book death match. Yeah. Do you think who would win?
Well, I think Dune Messiah would win.
Okay.
And I'm not saying because I'm not saying because I like it more just because it made a bigger impression on me, even though that impression was, I don't even want to say negative. The first time I read this book, I didn't like it, and all I wanted to do was finish it. I liked it a lot more this time, and I picked up on some things that we'll get into later that I totally missed the first time I read it. Yeah. Read through. It really does feel a lot like a prelude to the next book. And I remember thinking that the first time I read it, it feels like the in-between space between something better and what was. But that's my thoughts on the book.
Okay. All right. Well, Jim, why don't you take us into exploring some of the characters, or if you want to revisit anything we said, we can do that.
Yeah. Well, we had a number of characters. The book starts right out with Irulan, Scytale, and the Spacing Guild Navigator, and Mohaya.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how long the book went before Paul was being featured in it. It felt like a long time. Another big thing for me is Irulan feels very different from all of the other books in this one, especially after Paul of Dune. Yes.
But even the little we know of her in Dune, she feels different.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, in the audiobook, Jim, the one that you listened to, was there actually something that happened, the interrogation of that one historian, did that happen before in the audiobook?
Oh, yeah. And
was that in Dune Messiah too?
It's the
prologue. Yes, it was.
The prologue. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, the four people that I mentioned, once again, as seems to be normal for Frank Herbert, spell out the entire plot before the book even starts.
Right. Well, it's one of these things like, okay, that's a very Shakespearean principle. I mean, for years I taught Romeo and Juliet in high school, and Shakespeare spells out the play in 14 lines, a sonnet at the very beginning of the play. And he says, well, if you didn't get it here, I'm going to show you in the next 5 acts. And I mean, that's really what Frank Herbert's doing here.
Yeah, that meeting, it bothered me. The Irulan part is really like in the beginning of the meeting, you get the sense that they're trying to really convince her to join them, and like even the contraceptive thing, I was on board with that. Like that seemed in character, but how easily she just kind of was like, "Well, okay, like I'm already doing something against him. I might as well just be party to this thing that you're doing as well because we're protected." And I think she kind of feared they would kill her if she said no. But
yeah, we are introduced to the face dancers here, and obviously reading all the prequel books with Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert, we were familiar with them. But for people encountering, following Frank Herbert and Dune, and then Dune Messiah being the second book, this was a new thing for them.
Did they mention them at all in Dune, even just in passing?
I don't remember. I don't think so. Maybe someone in the chat room can let us know, but I don't remember the face dancers being mentioned. Do you, Jim?
I'm not sure. In Dune, there might have been.
Yeah, I felt like maybe there was a time where they just referenced face dancers and Angolas, but they didn't go into what they were or anything like that.
Yeah.
Did they
yeah,
mention
I think-
Golos in Dune?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know they mentioned the Tleilaxu, and I thought it was just like in a passive thing of the Tleilaxu and their face dancers and regrowing flesh or something like that.
Yeah.
Wrong, but
Yeah.
but not only do we see one even more than in what was that House Carino, where the other one was really featured with Fenring.
Okay.
Even more so than that, Scytale has a huge personality. Like he's completely independent. It's not just a Tleilaxu telling him what to do. And I think Bijaz even states it in the kind of like, we are the Tleilaxu, even though they're a product of theirs.
It is a search, and they're saying that they first appeared in Dune Messiah.
Okay.
So this is our first encounter of the face dancers, unless Roland's looking at it too, and unless Roland in the chat room finds something different.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, well, so we have this conspiracy going on, and we're also introduced to the fact that they are bringing hate into the scene, and this is of course Duncan, Idaho, and that was one of the storylines that I was fascinated with, that Paul was really pushing hate out on and said, okay, you have kind of this innate memory, but is there this idea of genetic memory where you really do have all the memories of Duncan?
Mm-hmm.
And that whole process of him remembering, not just that I am Duncan and there's stuff that I can do because I'm Duncan, but him having the literal memories of Duncan. I think that whole journey was kind of interesting for me.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I like to watch the like growth that you see in him for sure.
Yeah,
how he struggles with it.
Yeah, and how he's manipulated, or they try to manipulate.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Edric, the Spacing Guild character? I
was ambivalent.
Yeah.
Personally,
he was kind of a weak character in my mind.
He's very different from the navigator experiences we've had in the past.
Yeah, well, see that I think that's why I felt like he was just kind of like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Just, I guess he needed to be there because of the being in control of the travel between planets. They had to have a representative there, and not only that, because Paul had control of the spice.
Yeah. Well, moreover, he was blocking out the conspiracy, so Paul couldn't see the conspiracy. Did we just lose Jim?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think some audio tried playing in the background.
Oh.
Jim, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Yeah. So, so who else kind of stands out? We have this meeting at the beginning. Let's talk about maybe other significant parts.
Well, I mean, I guess the growth in the characters in general, like Paul. How did we see? I just see this defeated guy. He even in Paul of Dune, and he still seems he's angry, but he's still strong. And in this version of Paul, he feels he's defeated. He's given up on stopping the jihad. He's given up on saving Chani.
Yeah.
It's just like doesn't have much left to him other than to follow the footsteps ahead of him if he wants any kind of safety in the future.
Right. Well, is he giving up, or is he seeing prescience in the whole Cheney thing?
I think I mean,
he is given the option to save,
right? But they should be tortured and stuff,
right?
So I don't know. And then Cheney, she seems fairly static to me.
Well, let me go back to Paul here. Paul in this book reminds me of very much a continuation of the Paul that was in Paul of Dune. I felt in Paul of Dune when I read it that we had a character that was beginning very much to doubt and resent him being a figurehead, the Messiah. And I felt like this was a continuation of that. He was kind of looking out and saying, this has to end somewhere.
Right.
But I don't know. And so I did feel like for him, it was kind of a continuation. But.
I mean, it definitely felt like a natural growth for 12 years, but he had changed a lot.
Yeah. By the way, Roland said that Gola is mentioned in Dune, but only in the appendix of Dune. So that's the only reference it has to.
Okay, maybe that's where I remember reading.
So
now, to me, Paul was a despot. Okay, if for no other reason, through inaction.
Yeah.
You know, he did not do anything. He didn't want all these people to die, but he didn't do anything to stop it. He just let it go.
see, now we're back to the conversation again. Did he just let it go, or was he following prescience? This discussion really becomes full-fledged when we get into Children of Dune.
Yeah.
Of how much do you follow prescience and how much do you blaze your own path? Yeah. And he becomes very much in his world. He's very much, here's what prescience has determined, and this is the path he's walking, and so that means letting all this happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, he also sees what must be done for a better future, and in order for that better future to happen, he's got to be a part of all this horrible stuff.
But, you know, what role did Corva play here? I mean, Corva was the one really beating the drum.
Yeah, he's like a big religious leader, and I think this is where we get to see, like, Corva was a Fedaykin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Corva was an early adopter of Muad'Dib's teachings, and then saw power and filled a power vacuum, and then absolute power corrupts absolutely. Eventually, he wanted more and more, and you're not going to get that while figurehead's in the way, and so that's why he kind of did conspiracies to make the religious aspect stronger and stronger. Yeah. I like that when we see, Paul's been a part of fashioning this religion, and he's been a part of it on stage and behind stage. And then we see in the scene where he watches Alia perform her rites, and he sees what it's like to be a part of this from the people's standpoint and what they see, and how it sickens him to see how manipulative everything is and how easy it is to get washed. Even him, who knows what's going on, he's easily washed right up into it. So
what kind of baffles me, though, is how Stilgar, I'm not going to say stood by and watched Corva gain all this power, but rather didn't do anything to stop this. You know, I mean, Stilgar should have been aware as a naive of what was going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think I get the impression in this book he's more removed from, he's like the I forget what they call him. He's the technical planet ruler. The Naib's naive or whatever.
Yeah, the naive.
Yeah. So he's like in command of all the Fremen, but Paul's over him. And to a point, he's just kind of let Paul make all the choices, and kind of, and you see him struggling with that towards the end of the book, where he's kind of just let Paul become so much of a religious figure in his mind that when he's reminded that he's just a person, it shakes him tremendously.
He becomes a weaker character for a time.
Yeah.
That was kind of disappointing to me, because in Dune he was such a strong character.
Mm-hmm. looking forward, if I remember correctly, I feel like this is the turning point. Like at the end where he just chooses to disobey Paul is like his turning point back into becoming a stronger Fremen and a stronger leader on his own base.
You definitely see that, and when we get to Children of Dune, you'll definitely see him as a stronger leader than he is here.
Right, because he had to stand up because
yeah,
Paul wasn't there, and Ollie is not Paul as much as she wants to be Paul.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
How about changes in Alia? What do we see here? This young woman now.
The lover of Duncan. Of hate.
Yeah. She's more in control than I remembered her to be in this book.
Yes.
Yeah, but she's also dealing with a lot of adolescent tension.
Yes.
A great deal of adolescent tension.
I totally did not remember the whole subplot and innuendo of, not even innuendo, the blatant, like, Paul and her should have a baby stuff. The incest stuff. I completely, like, missed that when I read it the first time.
That's right. Yes. That seems to be, go ahead.
Isn't that what the Bene Gesserit wanted?
Yeah.
But of course that wasn't going to happen.
Well, wasn't there a couple... This was one of the outcomes that they could have done just to get the blood, to keep the bloodline. You know,
right?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? She is fairly stable in this book.
Yeah, I mean, you get the hint that she, towards the end of her reaching beyond her limits.
But that doesn't come into play really into this book.
No.
But this is I liked her in this book. She's not one of the characters that when I look back on it that stood out and saying, oh, this is so great. Like, I would say that Corba was one of those. You saw his deviousness. In fact, of all the conspirators, he was the one that I kind of focused on the most for me. But
why do you suppose Paul, who said if Mohiam ever set foot on Arrakis, she was going to be killed, why do you suppose he changed his mind about that?
I think he thought she had a part to play. I mean, he picked her out of the sky. She wasn't coming to Arrakis. He was just like, you're too close, and just had her come down. And I don't know, because then he even left orders that she wasn't to be killed.
Right.
And that's the order that Stilgar refused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he would left her alive. Maybe so that she could... Well, she was his grandmother, one. But maybe it was because...
so was the Baron.
Well, that's true. He didn't kill the Baron, though. That was all
she claims that she was not going to Arrakis. But... I think she was, actually. She was going to try to get there secretly somehow.
You think? I thought she was...
That was my impression to him.
Passing through, but maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a Bene Gesserit, so that could totally be within her capabilities.
Yeah.
There. I don't know. She's much weaker than we've seen her in the past.
Well, she's a lot older.
A lot older, yeah.
And there was a plot point with her. Gosh, I can't remember. She was going to go back to Wallach 9 to consult with the sisterhood about something, and I cannot remember.
Or that she wanted to, and he refused.
I don't remember.
That's what happens when you read 2 months ahead.
Oh, you don't remember. You don't remember either. So don't give me crap. You finished the book today.
Yesterday.
I heard you say you started it on Tuesday.
Monday.
Okay. A day off, bud. Stop giving me crap. Hey, so let's talk about some favorite. Go ahead. Are there any other points are there any other characters, or let's talk about some favorite moments in plot, maybe?
Okay, for me, so two big things stood out. From one, it's something I completely didn't pick up on the first time, or if I did, I completely forgot about. And that I found really interesting was the tarot cards, and how there was the subplot of them being dispersed to muddle up prescience, because if anybody was looking into the future, it made it more difficult to see the future around them. And so that all of a sudden you have all these people trying to see the future in the crowd, and just making it really difficult for Paul and Alia to see what's going on around them. And I thought that was really cool. And then I remember when I was reading it, the thing that really, really stuck out to me as being one of my favorite moments was the Thopter ride with Alia and Duncan, where she's kind of chiding him, and he's being like, Hyatt was very honest about everything and just spoke his mind, and he's kind of he's just kind of like giving it right back to her, but all at the same time he's kind of flirting with her, and he gets what's happening. She's not really sure of what's happening, and then he kisses her, and he's like, I'm sorry that I took the kiss that I wanted. And she's like, what do you mean that you wanted? He's like, I'm sorry, the kiss that you wanted. And then she's like, oh, maybe I did want that. But just that whole like back and forth between the two of them, where she's getting pissed off, but at the same time she's intimidated by him.
Yeah, and then he says, just be thankful that I didn't take all that was offered.
No. Yeah. By the way, that whole you had mentioned, why did Mohiam want to go back to, and I think maybe this is what Roland's referring to in the chat room, that Paul was trying to save Cheney's life, and he wanted to offer kind of genetic material for the life of Cheney in exchange for that.
That's right.
Yeah. That's so right. Kudos to Roland in the chat room for kind of pointing that out. But that's kind of why that discussion was going on.
And see, that my point for bringing that up is there seemed to be a few plot elements here that kind of just stopped, and there was no resolution to them, and that was one of them, because we never do find out what the sisterhood decided.
I don't think it mattered. Cheney died.
I don't think it mattered, because Paul made the decision that he was not going to save Cheney.
Why he could have? At that point she was already pregnant. I mean, how could he have, other than aborting the pregnancy?
They could have brought him back. Didn't the Teilaxu offer to bring her back?
Yeah, but that was a different price.
That was a different price, and he would have brought her back. And because of the way Duncan had recovered his memories, there was a good chance that she would have.
She could have. But the whole thing with the Teilaxu is that they would have killed him too.
Right.
Brought them both back under their control.
Yeah, that was kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite points here is when we have the nukes go off.
Stone burner.
Yeah, the stone burner. So when we had a stone burner happen, once earlier in Iraq is when the Ix guy, set one off to keep the Sardaukar from getting them, and it sent it off, and then they have a stone burner here that burns out Paul's eyes, but he's able to still see because of prescience, which is like totally awesome. I was like loving that, but only to a point. His prescient ends when the twins are born.
When Cheney dies,
when Cheney dies. So
but something else is that at that moment when Paul walks out to the desert, Alia also loses a good portion of her prescience.
So it's kind of linked.
Yeah, they're all kind of linked together.
Well, this is what causes her then in the next book to be such a spice whore.
Yeah, to try and get it back.
Right. And that was the other thing I liked. I love when Paul walks out into the desert. There's just something about, like him as being blind, walking out in the desert, and the unknown is kind of left there. I kind of built up. Go ahead.
He recovered his honor at that point, because that's what a blind Fremen is supposed to do.
Right. It was good. This is a culmination. I mean, it is kind of, for me, the culminating point in this book. You're this guy that's just struggling, and how do you handle this terrible thing that you've wrought? And this is how he handles it. This is how he walks. He just leaves it behind, lets it fall into other hands, and lets prescience go.
Yeah. I think if Leto hadn't been born, I don't think he would have walked out. But I think that because Leto speaks to him through the prescient vision, that he lets his throne to him.
Right.
He can handle what I couldn't when I'm not brave enough to.
Yeah. Well, he realizes that the children have been born aware, just like his sister was. So he can finally lay it down and walk away.
Yeah. Going back to the whole Stoneburner scene, the B-Jazz, I love him in that scene where he's just kind of like, let bygones be bygones, and B-Jazz and Paul should be gone. That's one of my favorite lines from it. He just like is rhyming, and he senses that there's something going on, and they should go, and just the way that he gets around to saying like we need to go is very
really quick. Do you want some brownie? It's ready. Do you want some brownie?
I tell you what, can you wait like 20 minutes? I'd love to have a brownie. Okay.
Hey, I want some brownies.
Jim wants some.
Yeah. Jim, you want a brownie? Chat room.
You want a brownie,
brownies.
All about brownies.
I've seen him drive hours for brownies.
Oh, really?
I'm
Nice.
just kidding. Yeah, just the way B-Jazz is kind of toying with Paul, but at the same time trying to get him ahead. And everyone else is kind of just like, oh, he's like that. Otheum and his wife are just like,
Right.
He's like, but Paul realizes there's depth to what he's saying.
Yeah.
So
I like what Roland's asking in the chat room here. Why do you think blind Fremen walked into the desert when most of the time Fremen were all about saving water for the tribe? Because they are losing water for the tribe when the Fremen walks into the desert.
yeah,
That's a great point, and I don't have an answer.
I think it's because they don't kill without reason.
Do they view the blind as being cursed?
I didn't think it was that. I thought it was more like, because they do that with don't they mention in one of the books that they do that with the children that aren't suitable for siege life? They just let them sit in the desert and be taken because they're consuming more water than they're regaining if they stay. So they just let them go. I don't know. Any ideas, Jim?
Well, I'm trying to think back of the water that they did reclaim from people, and I can't think of a situation where that would be where they would do that to a blind person or somebody that's imperfect. Perhaps it's just simply that they're tainted in some way, that their water should go to the desert, to Shai Hulud, rather than to the tribe.
Right. I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying there. I don't know if I would say tainted, but just more like water taken from someone while they're still alive is less. That's tainted. Like they haven't died. Then it's sacrilege to just kill them. So I don't know.
To kill someone without reason would not be right.
Right.
Or without honor. Maybe it's an honor thing.
Yeah, I think that when the blind walk out to the desert, they're choosing to take their burden off of the siege. And it's more about them taking the burden away from others than the siege saying you need to leave.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since we're in this area, let's talk about some of the themes that we saw in this book here. I mean, the big ones, religion and government.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
And how dangerous it is when religion becomes government.
Right. And I think that we see in a lot of scenes where Paul's making the choice to not allow certain things to become government and keeping them in religious awe.
Well, it's almost so the theme is kind of explored here, but man, in Children of Dune, it's prominent because religion, in a sense, has become government in that book. So we're seeing kind of the rise, especially when you look at Korba and what he's doing. He's trying to make religion government. Right. He's trying to make, in a sense, Paul, but really it's the ideal of Paul, the idea of Muad'Dib to be of religion, and he is the high priest of this religion and of the government. Well, and I think that's what they show in that little. So back to the prologue, right? When we have that whole interrogation of the historian from X, right? The fact that he's being interrogated secretly under the watchful eyes of Corba's agents. In the fact it's in the name of religion, in the name of Paul, and Paul's seems to have no clue that that's going on. Is very telling.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Jim?
As far as religion and government are concerned, religion is becoming the government, which is really scary in any case.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
The fanaticism and the justification for acts is just really, really disturbing to me when I think about the Crusades, the Knights Templar, and who were just an insane bunch of robbers, basically, and murderers, and how they justify it. You hate to see that happen. Right.
Even the conquistadors, when they came to Mexico and to the southern Americas, and how that all went down. Certainly, you see that. In the name of the Queen, but also in the name of the Church.
Yeah.
And and you can go a step further and say, okay, all of the Mesoamerican people that died from just the exposure to the diseases that weren't there, might be considered an act of God by the conquistadors.
Yeah. I do have a question, and this is kind of unrelated. So if you want, I'm going to mention it, and if you want to come back to it, we can. How did you feel about? So Paul finds out through Cheney that Irulan has been, feeding Cheney a contraceptive, keeping her from giving birth, and finds out too that she's kind of in league with this conspiracy, and yet refuses to kill Irulan.
Yeah, it's because she prolongs Cheney's life, and that's why he doesn't act out against her. And Cheney's like, "Why won't you?" And he doesn't want to tell Cheney because she's going to die.
Right.
But it's because if it weren't for Irulan, Cheney would have gotten pregnant a while ago and died already.
Yeah, that's a hard place to be in.
It is.
Now, would she have died, or was her death as a result of all the drugs that she was being fed?
I think that her death was inevitable, whether it be because she died at birth or she died from torture after having the children.
Is that the vision that Paul had with the moon falling into the planet?
Yeah, she was his moon.
Okay.
She was, because he mentions that he's like, when he says that when he's at her deathbed, he's saying, I wish that I could have chosen something different for you, but the other options were you tortured and killed that way, as well as the children.
When Johnny found out that she was being fed the contraceptive, she was ready to go rip Irulan to pieces.
Right. I think he also understood that Irulan, although because she wanted the child, she was against him, but she wasn't really against Paul. She was more about statehood. And she wanted the statehood to continue through the Carino line the way that it should, through the proper sources.
Right.
And it wasn't that she wanted Paul to die, or she wanted Cheney to die, or Cheney to never have children. She just wanted the royal heir to come from the royal marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, correct, and I may be wrong, but we get here that Shaddam is no longer here. He's no longer around, or is he here? I'm trying to remember.
He's
I know he's been. I know he was exiled, but by the next book, he's no longer around.
Right. They mentioned that he has forces practicing landing.
That's right.
Taking off, and then Paul sends tells Irulan to write him a letter that he shouldn't do that anymore.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So
somewhere in there, but they don't. Frank Herbert does not make a big deal of his death that I remember.
No, I think it's just mentioned in Children of Dune.
It's like passing.
I think Irulan goes to the funeral,
and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, so should we move on to anything else as far as plot lines or scenes that kind of stick out, or themes that do we need to talk? I know we mentioned religion. There's obviously, politics and government obviously is another theme that plays into it.
Self-sacrifice is the other one.
Oh yes,
because Paul's a huge thing is Paul just saying, like, I give myself to this vision of the future. It's horrible to get there, but it's more horrible if I don't give myself to it. And I don't have a choice, because if I let go, then I lose this. There's that, and then just like the general idea of prescience and all that kind of stuff.
The other thing one other point that I wanted to mention, that there was one point that I felt like I was reading a little bit of Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert, and that was the point when the face dancer kills the one girl.
Lichna.
Yeah. Like the description of that and the deceptiveness of that felt very some of the gruesome death scenes that we get in Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert's books.
Yeah.
But
one thing that I think is done better, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again, but this is right there in the Children of Dune movie, is that the scene where Lichna comes and begs of Paul, that he listens, and just like he does in this, and then she leaves. And I love that in that scene, it's not just Paul, but Stilgar comes up and he's like face dancer, and Paul's like, most definitely. And like both of them are kind of like onto the this massive trick that's tricked so many people. It doesn't just it's not just Paul that it stops like in the book, but Stilgar is also like, yeah, this isn't the real deal.
Yeah. Well, why don't we move into some of our favorite quotes? Jim, this is your baby. Do you want to lead us through us?
Yeah, I see here that David has some quotes listed in our notes. You want to read those and explain yourself?
Sure. The flesh surrenders itself. Eternity takes back its own. Our bodies stirred these waters briefly, danced with a certain intoxication before the love of life and self, dealt with a few strange ideas, then stumbled to the instruments of time. Then submitted to the instruments of time. What can we say of this? I occurred. I am not, yet I occurred. It's a quote from Paul, musing over what's the point of time and doing anything. The convoluted wording of legalisms grew up around the necessity to hide from ourselves the violence we intend toward each other. Between depriving a man of 1 hour from his life and depriving him of his life, between depriving a man of 1 hour from his life and depriving him of his life, there exists only a difference of degree. You have done violence to him, consumed his energy. Elaborate euphemisms may conceal your intent to kill, but behind any use of power over another, the ultimate assumption remains: I feed on your energy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
That's good.
Anything that you do towards someone is just like, killing. This next one's from B-Jazz. And he had a lot of good ones, but I really like this one when he's talking to Duncan. He says, I have said, blow out the lamp. Day is here. And you keep saying, give me a lamp so that I can find day. And I don't know. I could come.
That's a good one.
That could have been in the Bible. That
could have been, yeah.
Can you collect chaos? Not collecting. That is the ultimate gathering. What can you gather without gathering yourself? And that was a Zensuni principle.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Duncan said that to Alia, I believe, when she was asking him some questions.
We didn't mention this, but I love the mentat, Duncan.
Yeah,
I love him as a mentat because we don't have that.
I do. I think he's a better mentat than Paul is.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And then I don't know. He's more testy than Thufir was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Duncan kind of hurts my brain as a mentat. You have to think too much to try to figure out exactly what he's trying to say.
I think that's the Zensuni side of him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
Okay. Scott, how about your quotes?
All right. So I have a couple here. They're pretty short, and I don't have who attributed them. They're in Dune Messiah, though. I love this one. Truth suffers from too much analysis. I thought that was pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is another one in Dune Messiah saying any of these, so I'm kind of slept in that. But they are not mad. They are trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated. Only knowledge is dangerous.
I think that Skytail says that.
Yeah, it's a pretty a strong one. And this is kind of, go ahead.
That's funny because I would say just the opposite. Belief is more dangerous than knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I guess in this case, knowledge is dangerous to belief.
Yeah.
It's kind of what.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. Reason is the first victim of strong emotion. I felt like that's like a Confucius saying.
Yeah.
You know, Confucius say reason is the first victim of strong emotion.
So true. So true.
So I have two others here. Empires do not suffer emptiness of purpose at the time of their creation. It is when they have become established that aims are lost and replaced by vague ritual. I thought that was a good one. And then one more. If you need something to worship, then worship life. All life, every last crawling bit of it. We are all in this beauty together.
Yeah. Paul says that when he's thinking about why they shouldn't praise him.
Yeah. That's a great line, though. Anyway, so those are my quotes.
Good.
Okay. And along with the empires do not suffer quote that Scott just did, I found a couple others that I kind of like. Another one was, I have had a belly full of the god and priest business. You think I don't see my own mythos? Consult your data once more, hate. I have insinuated my rights into the most elementary human acts. People eat in the name of Muad'Dib. They make love in my name. They are born in my name. Cross the street in my name. A roof beam cannot be raised in the lowliest hovel of Gang Ishri without invoking the blessing of Muad'Dib. And that's from the book of diatribes from the Hate Chronicle.
Can you imagine having like that happen to your name? Like in the name of Jim or the name of David, the name of Scott.
I'm living it.
You're like,
I don't know if that's arteries.
Yeah.
Getting close.
Oh
my. One more quote. I had one more quote. It says, no matter how exotic human civilization becomes, no matter the developments of life and society, nor the complexity of the machine-human interface, there always comes interludes of lonely power when the course of humankind, the very future of humankind, depends upon the relatively simple actions of single individuals.
That's good.
And that's kind of like after the avalanche starts, it's a little bit difficult for the individual snowflakes to protest.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, these are some good quotes. You know, I think the one thing that this book did give us is because it was there was so much talk, we did end up with a lot of good quotes.
Yeah, I agree.
I didn't feel that the quotes like at the beginning of chapters were quite as pivotal for me, but there was some good conversation going on and good dialogue as Paul was kind of wrestling with this idea of being the Godhead.
Yeah, I agree with that. The epigraphs weren't nearly as profound as they had been previously.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I just thought of? It happened during this, and I thought, right there, people, right there is our argument personified. In this book, Paul makes a comment about Irulan's histories being trash and a throwaway thing. So right there is all you need for your Frank Herbert proof that the quotes at the beginning of chapters of Irulan are not 100% true.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Let's take that Whoever it was in the comments that always writes us about that.
Oh, we're gonna get hate mail for that. Well, next listener feedback show, we'll be getting a lot of talk about that.
Tell you what,
Thanks a
though,
lot, Dave.
I still would like to read a compilation of Irulan's comments and her
Yeah.
observations. It just seems like they'd make some really good reading.
You should just start writing them down as you go along.
Yeah.
You could be that person.
Yeah, that and all the collective quotes on the Orange Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather take lute lessons.
Here we go again. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, let's jump into some of our final thoughts here. Anything else we want to add about this book before we move on?
No, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good.
Jim?
No, and I kind of have to agree with you guys when you say it seems like a more of an interlude between Dune and Children of Dune.
Yeah.
It's shorter. It's more concise. Not very much action, and it's just kind of setting up the next part of the epic, which is the children.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and rate this book. Jim, how would you rate this book?
I'd have to give it a solid 4. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the political intrigue. I enjoyed the ins and outs of everything, and it did. At first I didn't like Paul very much, and then as time went on, I kind of liked him more. When it started, I didn't like Alia very much, but I began to like her a lot more. So, yeah, I have to give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay. How about you, Scott?
There were some good points in this book. It was much more ponderous than Dune was. I can't give this a 4. Maybe a 3.25, maybe. I don't know what I gave Paul of Dune. Did I give Paul of Dune a 3? Or was I higher?
Give it a 4.
What?
Whatever you did, I bumped my score up because of the peer pressure.
Anyways, I think that this is if I put this alongside of Dune, I can't give this a really high score.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it wasn't good. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy parts of it. And there were certain parts I really liked, but then there were parts I was like, well, the plot isn't holding together quite as well for me as I wish it would. There's a lot of telliness, and we don't get as much of the world development that we got in Dune. I'm going to stick with 3.25.
Okay.
For me.
Okay. Well,
if you say 5, I'm walking out.
Yeah, so this is a 5.57. You just hear the door slam. Feed just cuts out. This book was hard. I remember reading it the first time and reading it this time. I enjoy this book, and I'm not going to say that it's not a good book, but when you compare it to the other Dune books, and that's what I really put my ratings up against, this book just doesn't feel like it holds up to Dune or the following Frank Herbert books. And even I knew that the first time I read it too. It's because it's a fast read, which is a good thing, but because it's a fast read, I would jump 15, 20 pages and be like, why did I just read 15 to 20 pages? I don't feel like I've absorbed anything of consequence. Not even some of the dialogue was good and meaningful and stuff, but then sometimes you were just kind of like, nothing has happened. I'm waiting for the next thing to happen. Yet that's all this book is waiting for the next thing to happen. And it's not going to come now. It's going to later. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, this book gets a 2 out of 5.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is probably
we're all over the place in this rating.
Yeah, this is probably my going to be my lowest rated book, and that's not because it's I'm not saying it's a bad book, but I'm saying compared to the other Dune books so far, and I know that I had trouble. I think it was it House Harkonnen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was House Harkonnen that I had trouble with, but that had more action in it. It kept me more like tied in because it was longer, and I just kind of put up with it longer. But this one, I don't know.
Well, I guess fortunately for Jim, most of the reviews online are agreeing with him. People are giving it 4 out of 5 stars, 3.5 out of 5 stars. People, as a general rule, like this book.
Really,
as a part of it.
It's if you were going to say, are you just going to rate it as a science fiction book and not against the other two books, I might bump it up to like a 3 or 3.5. But I am rating it against the other Dune books. And truth be known, the scale goes 1 to 5 for a reason.
Right. Hey, you're entitled.
That may be why I am high on my rating, is because I don't compare the books to each other. I take each one as its own entity.
Yeah. Well, I think normally I try to do that, but with this book I can't. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way the book is. I just can't see this book on its own.
You have a Dune Messiah complex.
I do have a Dune Messiah complex. I do have a Dune Messiah. So, what do we think is going to happen next in Winds of Dune? Now, I have not read Winds of Dune.
I have not read Winds of Dune.
And I know Jim just started.
Yeah, I started.
So where is Winds of Dune supposed to take place?
It's between Dune Messiah and Children of Dune.
All right.
It's focused on, like Paul of Dune was Paul. This is supposed to be Irulan, or it's either Irulan or Alia. One of the two is the main focus.
It will be interesting to see how, if it is Alia, it'll be interesting to see how she rises to the status that she has at the beginning of Children. If it's Irulan, it'll be interesting to see how she handles playing nursemaid to the children that are not really her children now that Paul is gone.
Right.
Jim? So those are the two things I'm looking to see how they play out. And especially now that, how does the world exist without their Messiah?
How about you, Jim?
Well, as you said, I've started to read this, so I have a little bit of prescience into what's going on already. But barring that, if I look back before I started reading the book, my concept of what I think would be going on was everybody is going to sort out what their roles are as far as the children are concerned. Okay, at the end of Dune Messiah, Irulan is ready to take on the role of educating the children. Alia is going to take on the role of ruling the universe, and Stilgar is going to, take care of the Fremen thing, and Duncan is going to advise Alia as a mentat. So I just kind of see a distribution of where the power is going to lie and how it's going to be used.
Yeah. Roland in the chat room is saying that he thought the focus of the book was Jessica.
Now, I was under the impression
he said it was originally called Jessica of Dune.
If I remember correctly, Jessica of Dune is one of the 4 books that were to be written in the series, and that was the last book to be written. And I don't remember where it was supposed to stand. That it was supposed to be Paul, Irulan, and Alia, and then Throne of Dune, which focuses on Leto II after Children of Dune, and then there was supposed to be a 4th one that focused on Caladan and Jessica.
And those 2 have not been written. The last
those two, they went and they started writing the school books instead. I don't know if it was
in deference to Roland, at the point I am at now, Jessica does play a very prominent role in this book. If I could be just a little spoilery, at this point, at the point I'm at, Jessica and Alia have resolved some differences that had been between them.
Yeah, they don't stay resolved. But
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I
Don't tell me that. No.
You read Children of Dune, didn't you?
I did a long time ago. Real
Okay.
long time ago.
All right.
I'm looking. Irulan is one of my favorite characters because of who she is in Children of Dune. I'm really excited to see her move that way. I'm excited also to see Alia be a strong character without being the character that she becomes in Children of Dune. So we shall see what's there. So I guess that about wraps us up. So it's time to do our end of the show type things. We have two things that we always like to talk about, and the first is our app. Why don't you talk about our app?
Yeah, so ZogPod Collective, we have an app where the episodes are put up there and you can listen to them, download them, star them your favorite. It's a collection. It's called the ZogPod Collective because it's a collective of a couple different podcasts, primarily the Sci-Fi Diner podcast, but also the Dune Saga podcast and all the extras that you can download there, star, and call into the show and let us know your feedback. And we can and we'll talk about it on our listener feedback show, which we'll be recording next.
Yeah.
So it's a great play to get that. It's available in iTunes, Android, wherever good apps are sold. And the best thing about this app is it is free. Free. So that's always good. Free is good.
Yeah.
And what else?
Well, we also have to talk about our Patreon.
Patreon.
Yeah. If you go to patreon.com/Dune Saga Podcast, you'll find our Patreon page. What Patreon is, it's a way for you, the listeners, to help support the show if you choose to. We'll always provide the show for free, but if you would like to help us out in some of our costs and stuff like that, if you feel like that, $1 a show, $1 a month is it would be a huge help for us. So patreon.com/Dune Saga Podcast, and there are different types of rewards for if you want to go to certain levels. Once you're a Patreon supporter, you get a look at some of our behind the scenes stuff, maybe some inside jokes a little bit earlier than other people would get them, such as a certain famous internet meme featuring Jim.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That was on there a couple weeks before it hit the rest of the internet, as well as options to have, private chats or even be on the show. Or if you reach the all-powerful level of loot lessons, there's that too.
Yeah.
$1,000 per episode.
$1,000 per episode. So it's if it ever gets there.
But I'll tell you what, guys, I broke a string on the loot today, and I could really use a restring job. So let's get on that Patreon.
Let's get on that.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. So patreon.com/Dune Saga Podcast, or follow any of the links to it on our website, dunesagapodcast.com. Now, if you've got something you want to talk about respond to something we said, maybe chew me out for my comment earlier on Frank saying that Irulan's writings were worth nothing, or any type of response to the book we're reading or whatever for our listener feedback show, there are several ways that you can do that. You can email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at Dune Saga Podcast. You can comment on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Dune Saga Podcast. Or you can call our all-powerful voicemail line and leave us a voicemail. And the number for that is
1260577-CHAT. That's 1260577-2428.
There you go.
Call now. Operators are standing by.
Yeah. Jim, when he's not playing the lute, he just sits by the phone.
Just waiting for calls. Waiting for you to call.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
He has no life.
None whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So please, we love to hear your feedback. It's great. We love to share it with everyone else. We love the conversation going on. Remember that you can always join us live for our recording at dunesagapodcast.com/live. To find out when we're recording next, go to dunesagapodcast.com. There's a nice little calendar right there on the side of the webpage that shows when the next time we'll be recording.
And we update it when we change it.
Yep. So. And it's Eastern time.
Yep.
Just so you know, you can join in the chat there with many people and take part in the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, once again, for the Dune Saga podcast, I'm Scott Herzog.
And I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Jim Marrowwood. And may
Shy.
food.
Okay. Got it.
Let's
No,
do
go
that
ahead.
again.
You know,
Is that
yeah.
what the big red letters mean?
Is it for me to say that, or is it for him?
I think it's for you to end. I forget what we had it. So I was just kind of like,
Okay,
but I think it's for you to end it.
I will lead it, and you wrap up with the catchphrase, Jim.
Okay, that
right.
works for me.
All right. Well, once again, for the Dune Saga podcast, I'm Scott Herzog.
I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood. And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
Bing.
Bing.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Stopping recording. Nice. Hey, I'm ready for it. We're coming. We will take a 5-minute break for those in the chat room, and we will be back.
Yeah. We're going to have food.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Jim, more tea. Go ahead. What?
Yeah.
He did that intentionally.
I ate ice cream.
What?
Yeah.
Where's your shirt?
Where's your shirt?
Test 1 2 testing 1 2. Okay, close that. Close that.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. Hey, the Pack's ahead 7-0.
Woohoo!
Oh yeah.
Now, if only I were a Packers fan.
Well, tell you what, if you give up on that team that you got near there.
Well, I'm about ready to give up on them, but it doesn't mean I won't root for them. They certainly aren't impressing me anytime soon.
Yeah.
But then again, has the Pack really been impressing you this year?
Not till last or Sunday when they played and decimated Chicago.
Yeah. Well, you can't have everything, right? So,
Yeah.
all right.
Packer fan, good or
Yeah.
bad. Tell
That's
you.
right. All right. Are we so we are doing listener feedback show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to rock and roll here?
I am if you are.
I am. I have my bad reviews,
Oh.
so I'm ready to go. So, and you have all the feedback in?
Uh-huh.
All right. When are we doing the poll? We're going to do that first, last?
Ooh, we should have done that last episode.
Well, we can do it in this episode. Oh, that's right. We need to introduce it, but we can just throw one up there.
Yeah, I'll just put it in.
All right. So I have the poll here. When we
Let's
want to
start
do
with the poll.
Start with the poll?
Do you have the email open?
I do.
Okay.
Not the email. Oh, do you know what? I didn't download the
The wave.
The wave. Woo!
Woo!
Who was it to send it in?
Rick.
Miniseries. Okay, download it. Got it. And hello. There we go. All right, very good. I have it, and so you just gotta let me know when, and let me make sure I have that.
I have it as one of your doohickeys.
One of my doohickeys.
Yeah.
That was the most descriptive thing you ever said.
Mm-hmm. I get that from my mom.
Hey, we got a neat Star Wars discussion going on in the chat room.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and then this is. It shows you how much I'm paying attention to the chat room right now.
Probably because of my shirt.
Oh really?
Bad boys for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Roland, why didn't you remind us?
Yeah. If only Roland would have reminded us, we would have said the poll.
Yeah.
He is our
right.
mentat after all.
He is our mentat. That's it. That's he. Roland, you are the official mentat.
Oh, Bridge of Hithgrove is our official mentat.
He is, but he's not in the chat room. In the chat room, he is the official mentat.
Paul, but Roland is our mentat Zensuni leader. If Bridge of Hithker is our Howlett or Tooth
There we go.
Cooper, he's our
Duncan, Idaho.
Duncan, Idaho,
Right.
for sure.
All right. Hey, are we ready to go here? Do we have everything good?
If you got it, then we're good. We'll start with the poll at the beginning.
Yeah, well, we're going to like introduce it right first.
Yeah,
We'll give our digits and Patreon, all that app, and then we'll go into the poll.
Right.
So before the feedback. All right. Very good. Jim, are you going to count us down again?
I will. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Dune Saga podcast. I'm David Moulton.
And I am Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood.
And welcome to our listener feedback show. Now, the book that we read this month was Dune Messiah, but of course, you can leave feedback about whatever you want in the Dune universe. Call us out on things, talk about future books, past books, whatever you'd like. We're glad to talk about it.
Yep.
Now, if you want to take part in the conversation, there are several ways that you can do that. You can email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at dunesagapodcast, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/dunesagapodcast. There is also our voicemail where you can call and leave a message, and the number for that is
1-260-577-CHAT. That's 1-260-577-2428. You can also take part in the discussion by joining our chat room, which currently is suggesting our next poll. Your favorite instrument, and all the answers would be the lute.
That might have to be it.
Yeah, there we go. Lute. Which instrument would you play from doing lute, Bowset lute?
Yep.
And
you can find out when we'll be live on dunesagapodcast.com. We have a little calendar there on the side as to where you can join our chat conversations.
Yep, on the site. So.
Take part in the show.
We do have an app, by the way, that has all this information in. So you can download episodes, you can call in, you can send emails from the app, and we will take it and use it.
Yeah. Before we go get into things, I'll just remind you about our Patreon campaign. If you enjoy the show and would like to help support us continuing to do what we do, there's a site called Patreon, and that's developed just for that reason. You can become a monthly subscriber. If you think the show is worth $1 a month, great. Thank you very much. That's $1 a month that would help us continue to do what we're doing. There are different rewards levels set up for different amounts that you might want to give per month if you decide to do it, such as bonus behind the scenes stuff, being a guest on the show, famous lute lessons from the crazy ballad man Jim himself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's an easy $1,000 an episode, I think.
Yeah.
Several people are probably go with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want lute lessons?
Yeah.
From Jim?
So patreon.com/Dune Saga Podcast, or follow any of the links for it on our website.
No, absolutely.
Well, Jim, why don't you get us started tonight here on our listener feedback?
Actually, aren't we doing that poll first? You really don't want to do the
goodness.
You really don't want to do the poll tonight.
If Roland would have just reminded me,
right? He is our guild navigator after all. He's supposed to helping us. He's supposed to help us navigate the podcast because we obviously can't.
I know.
Do it tonight.
He needs to guide us like the sisterhood in the breeding program.
Right. Riding the wave of historical time and coughing out the Kuzat's Hadarak.
Yeah.
So the poll question for this week was, which is your favorite actor-character combination from the 1984 Dune feature film? And so who do you think, without looking, won this poll? David, let's go to you first.
Okay. I think that best actor character combo is probably going to be Sting.
Okay. Jim, how about you?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I would probably say Patrick Stewart as Gurney.
All right. So number one vote, hands down, with 33% of the vote. We had 78 people vote. 33% of the vote, Patrick Stewart and Gurney Halleck.
Oh.
So you were right. Coming in a far second was Francesca Nias as Lady Jessica.
Okay.
And third place with 12% of the vote was Kyle MacLachlan as Paul Atreides. They felt like he portrayed him very well. My vote was Pidley. I did vote for Sting. I thought that Sting and Fade Routha, that was my vote, but didn't get very many. Didn't get very many.
I did vote for Gurney. But
You voted for Gurney.
I thought that Sting would win.
Yeah. Yep.
I voted for Jurgen Prochnov as Leto.
You're gonna.
Yeah, you are a fan of his.
That's right.
Yes.
Is he even here? He has to be here.
He's there somewhere.
Oh yeah, so he got 9% of the vote. So, but Beaster Band didn't get any votes.
Oh.
And Stilgar, no votes. Princess Irulan, no votes. So
Wow.
Duncan Idaho and Wellington Huey all got 1 vote. So yeah, so that's kind of it. And we will have a new poll up. And do we know what that's going to be besides loot?
It's actually loot or Balicet, which is the right one. Yeah, got that open. I have that in front of me, so you'll have to.
So do we have it? Do you have the new one up already?
It's not up already, but it's we have an email containing the new.
Oh, we do.
Question.
Okay, so new question will be on, and what is it? It's an discussion question. Is that it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the discussion question I think for the next week will be: in a quest to take over the universe, which would you rather be the head of? Religion, military, or government?
I mean,
is there like a D? None of the above.
None of the above. Man, I don't even know where I would stand on that.
Yeah.
You know where you're going to go, Scott?
Not yet, but hey, we'll find out when I vote and the next time we record.
That's true. So you can find the poll, of course, on any of the posts.
Yep, absolutely.
On DuneSagaPodcast.com.
Well, we do have to get into feedback. And Jim, why don't you take us into the first bit of feedback that we got?
Okay. We got one from Rebecca Bueller on the Dune miniseries. And she very simply says, I disagree about Chani. Sean Young forever.
Okay.
I think that's in reference to we were talking about who we prefer to two. And I was saying the other Cheney. So.
She is entitled to her opinion. I'm still voting for Cheney in the Dune miniseries.
Yeah, I went that direction too.
Yeah. But Rebecca, we love you. Thank you so much for writing your thoughts on that. So.
Yeah. So Max Nolan comments for the Dune miniseries. He says, hello again, guys. I've been enjoying the podcast today. I'm glad to hear other people's thoughts about the sci-fi miniseries. Since it was my introduction to Dune as a kid, it definitely holds a lot of nostalgia for me. I figured I'd send you a link to a big Dune character montage that I recently finished up. Took quite a long time. I've got just about every important character from the original book in it. And we did post this on Facebook. So if you head over to facebook.com/DuneSagaPodcast, you can see Max's montage of characters.
That's awesome. And it looks good.
Yeah.
I think I must have missed it in the line.
Yeah.
So.
We've shown some stuff of his before. He likes to draw a lot of Dune stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We did. Well, Max, thank you for writing in. And it was his introduction to Dune as a kid.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Where is your Dune Saga podcast fan art?
That's why exactly. I mean, come on.
Hey, where is it? Come on, Max.
Get in the dirt. Well, Rick, is it Tetralt? Am I pronouncing the name right?
Tetralt.
Tetralt. Okay. Yeah. So from Starbase 66, a podcast. If you have not listened to that podcast, you really should be. But he commented on the Dune miniseries and he sent in a voicemail. So let me go ahead and fire that up. And hopefully you folks can hear it. And we'll go from there. You guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here we are.
You have it. Yeah.
Greetings, gentlemen. Rick or Marius from Starbase 66 calling in to tell you about my views on the Dune miniseries and your show about the same. I rewatched the show earlier this week so I could listen to your show yesterday, and I loved it as always. And I agreed with you guys on a lot of points, although I think you were a little more forgiving of the miniseries than I was. But as I think it was David said that this was his first exposure to Dune, and so he's got a soft spot in his heart for it. I can buy that. I think overall the miniseries stuck much closer to the book than the movie did, for the most part. I even didn't mind them expanding Irulan's part. They certainly made her character far more interesting than just a couple of quotes at the beginning of each chapter. I think that the actress that played Chani and the actor that played Baron Harkonnen were fantastic. I loved the last 30 minutes of the thing. The Battle of Arakeen and the knife fight between Paul and Fade at the end were really, really well done. I loved the costumes for the most part. The still suits were awesome. The armor, especially the Harkonnen armor, which was obviously based on samurai armor, was really, really cool. And it was great to see the Water of Life ceremony with the requisite orgy afterwards, although I also got the lots of nudity version, and I understand why they put nudity into films, and part of me doesn't mind it at all, but it didn't need to be there. It kind of cheapened things a little bit for me. There was no reason for people to be naked other than, hey, we can make people be naked. Anyway, overall though, I think the casting in general was terrible. Paul was okay, Jessica was okay. William Hurt seemed bored through the whole thing. I know he's a fantastic actor. I know he can do a hell of a lot better, but he just really didn't see. He's totally phoning it in my opinion. Stilgar, while his performance was fine, the guy looked like Murray from Accounting. Stilgar should look like freaking Khal Drogo, not like a short, pudgy, balding, middle-aged dude. I don't know. I've never understood that. Even the first time I watched the miniseries when it was on, I never got that bit of casting. It was great seeing Fenring there, although again the actor was kind of on the ugly side. Shaddam never really came across as regal to me either. He just seemed like he should be on a can of SpaghettiOs as opposed to ruler of the entire galaxy. And I've got to disagree with you guys on one point. I think the actor that played Gurney Halleck was absolutely abysmal. I think he sounded like a high school actor trying to sound better than he is, and I didn't believe a word that came out of his mouth. Just didn't like him at all. For being 4 hours long, I think they glossed over way too much. There was no development of the Bene Gesserit as a force to be reckoned with, other than just women in strange costumes. The Gam Jabbar test at the opening of the show, there was no weight to it whatsoever. I think that's the problem with the whole thing. There was no weight to it. They were moving so fast, nothing had any significance. Whereas in Lynch's Dune, everything was way too significant. I think it went just the opposite in the miniseries, where everything was just glossed over. It just sort of happened. Like y'all were saying, if you haven't read the book, I think you'd be completely lost watching the miniseries. I love the worms. The worms were awesome. The design of them, the execution of them, especially for being a sci-fi production and being from 2000, I think the effects hold up really well. I love the sets. But there was no development of the Fremen. There was no development of the Harkonnens. They were just evil for the sake of evil. The secret garden in Arakeen Palace was just open to the rest of the world. There was no still suit discipline, as you all pointed out. All the Fremen were just wearing normal clothes most of the time. Why the hell would Stilgar wear a green outfit on Arrakis? There's no green on Arrakis, so it would stand. I don't know. Also, why was Gurney? I mean, we know why Gurney believed Jessica was the traitor, but it wasn't shown in the show at all. So that whole scene had no significance or no meaning. So I'm kind of half and half. I wanted to hate it. I don't hate it quite as much, but it showed me that either my belief that Dune cannot be made into a decent film or miniseries is true, or it requires something on the scale of Game of Thrones to do it right. Because there's so much minute detail, there's so much minutia. I mean, they didn't even really get into what the spice does to anyone other than Paul, and even then, it was pretty vague. And so, anyway, that's my take on it. Love listening to your show. You guys are awesome as always. Please keep up the great work. Love the interview with Brian Herbert. Sorry, and looking forward to lots more. Thank you very much, and may Shai Hulud clear the path before you. Bye bye.
Awesome. That was an awesome voicemail. Thanks a lot, Rick. And so, and well thought out comments. Really loved it. let's talk a little bit about some of the things he addressed. We commented on the fact that the nudity seemed unnecessary, but there were orgies in the book, and I think they were trying to capture that in their mind, and obviously boobage sells, I guess, and but it does. But I agree that in a movie like this, it is almost trite to put something like that, at least in my opinion.
I mean, they weren't on it when it aired on TV. Chances are, if you're buying this, it's because you saw it on TV.
Right. Yeah.
So,
any thoughts on this, Jim?
Yeah, it didn't need to be there, and as you say, boobage sells.
Yep.
Yeah.
So casting terrible for the most part. So he was anti. Leto's bored. You have a pudgy Stilgar, a Paul that should be on the can of SpaghettiOs, and a Gurney Hallett that is a high school actor, but he can play the lute.
Yeah,
that's what I put in my comment. Jim was like, "You turkey." But what do you think of his comments here about the actors being unable to really carry out the roles?
I disagree. I love what's his name is Paul. Like, he is Paul to me.
He will always be Paul. And I think, let me put it this way, he becomes even more Paul to me in Children of Dune.
Yeah.
But you see him here as Paul. He's my Paul.
I think it's hard to look at this miniseries and not think about the performances in Children of Dune for some of these things, specifically Paul and Cheney and Irulan. I love Irulan in these films, and she's so pretty. Side note, yeah, it's just one of those. I like the guy who plays Gurney. He's not a good actor. A lot of the people aren't good actors, but I don't know. He just like was Gurney to me. He just kind of like he came off as powerful, yet he was a little pudgy, so he seemed like relaxed. He was kind of like that uncle figure that you didn't want to mess with, but he was still like the guy you wanted to pal around with. Yeah, I mean, the guy who plays Duncan, and it's no good either. Stilgar, I'll give you Stilgar. He's no good.
What do you think about what Matthias said in the chat room, that the orgy scenes are there because he couldn't afford clothes for the actors? It was low budget. So there you go. That's why we have the orgy scenes.
Had enough money for Earl.
Oh, you wanted to see her in those scenes.
I'm just saying.
What about his comment that it is impossible to bring Dune to the small screen or big screen? Or do we? I almost am in agreement that it needs the Game of Thrones treatment.
I'm going to agree with that as well.
In order to really bring this back.
I know. You know, I agree with you there. When we talked with Brian, he mentioned there could be something in the pipelines, but who knows what it is.
Right. There's always stuff in the pipelines, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Jim?
I think I agree with Rick on that point. It's going to really be difficult to make a decent film or miniseries of Dune because it's so detailed and so involved. Okay. However, I do want to tell Rick that I'm so disappointed that he didn't come to my defense on the loot issue. I really expected that he would help.
Oh man, Rick, you let him down.
I would also like to mention, as far as Starbase 66 is concerned, I just listened to their most recent episode the other day, and this is going to be their last season for the Starbase. That'll be 7 years worth of Starbase 66.
Wow.
And they're going to put it to sleep, and hopefully there's other projects, because I really enjoy listening to those guys.
Oh wow!
Well,
7 years they've been podcasting. That's a long time.
When I shut down my show, the Langcast, after 5 years, it wasn't an easy thing to let go of. So I'm sure, sure you're going through some difficulty with that, Rick. So good luck.
So if you haven't checked out Starbase 66, make sure you check them out. It's Rick's show, and other people that are involved in that. We've been on that show, but so go ahead and listen to us there, but listen to many of the other episodes they have, and those are the things they talk about. Well, Jim, why don't you take us into this next email?
Now I'll warn you, Jim, because I put this walkthrough together. This is a long email, so whenever you feel like you've reached a point where you want to talk about something,
well, you have it broken down into points.
Yeah.
Do you want to read like number one and then us talk about it, or how do you want us to do that?
Well, I thought, this is how he wrote it.
Okay.
So you could stop. Some of the points aren't necessarily.
Discussion.
Yeah.
So if there's, I guess, maybe a point that you feel is discussion, we can stop after that point, Jim.
Yeah.
Your discretion.
No, I'll just check with you guys after each one.
Okay.
It says, Bill on Dune in general. Dear Dune Saga podcast, cast, and crew. Please share my email below on your podcast if you wish. Please tell me if the 5 attachments do not come through. Number 1, thanks for having a podcast about the Dune Saga. I'm not a very big fan, but I recently watched the final cut of the movie Blade Runner, and I was thinking about what other interesting sci-fi movies there were from the 1980s, and I remembered the 1984 Dune movie. Lately, when a movie or other media work strikes me as interesting, and I'd like to know more about it than Wikipedia can give me factually, I search for podcasts on it. So that really is how I found your podcast. I haven't listened to every episode, but I really enjoy what you guys do. Any discussion on that?
Well, this is like the easiest discussion here is thank you. Thanks for finding us.
Thank you.
And thanks for writing in, for being a new listener.
Yeah, absolutely. And came to us through Blade Runner. That's awesome.
Right. Okay, number 2. My brother and his best friend did a 10th grade English project on the first novel years ago. I remember that to give interaction in their book presentation, they passed out a drink to the class. I think it was coffee. That included cinnamon to give them a taste of melange. They had a lot of fun with it. So that sounds like it'd be kind of neat.
Yeah. So Scott's writing down notes here, I think, for when he teaches about Dune eventually.
No, I'm chatting in the chat room.
No, you're taking notes. I know.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Number 3. I am presently halfway through the semi-full cast audiobook of the first novel, Dune. It is neat so far. I wasn't sure what you guys were talking about in that one episode where you said the voices kept switching. Now I know what you mean. To clarify for everyone who isn't clear, the audio production toggles between segments with a single narrator reading all the roles and segments with a narrator plus a full cast with ambient music and sound effects. If you guys said that on that episode, I must not remember, because I probably chose to disbelieve that someone would produce an audiobook in such a strange way. Nevertheless, they did. Strangely, this wasn't the first time Dune, the novel, was produced as an unabridged audiobook. The first unabridged edition had Scott Brick as the single narrator. The semi-full cast unabridged edition has Simon Vance as the narrator. Scott Brick was one of the character voices in the semi-full cast edition. Given that they were taking the effort to produce a second unabridged version, I don't know why then they didn't do the whole thing the right way. Given an exclusive choice, I say having a semi-full cast. Given an exclusive choice, I say having a semi-full cast with ambient sound effects and music is far better than having a single narrator for the entire book. But the toggling is definitely distracting to me at least. During each single narrator segment, I keep looking forward to the next full cast back in the next segment and wondering when that next segment will begin.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to the audiobooks. So that's
I listened to the audio. Did you listen to the Dune audiobook, Jim?
Yes, quite a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm with him in this. This whole single narrator, the full cast, and it did make it hard to follow. And I I liked it. I personally like when Scott Brick narrates the whole dang thing. He has a great voice, and I'm ready for us to get back into like Winds of Dune, where I'll be hearing just his voice narrating Winds of Dune. Because I kind of missed that in Children and missed that in Dune itself. Now he is one of the voices. I wasn't aware that there was an unabridged version with just Scott Brick of it.
It's
Or did
with some other guy with Simon Vance.
well that is the one that has the
Oh, I'm sorry.
multi voices.
I got that confused.
Yeah, so that's the one with the multi voices. But apparently he's saying that there's a version that Scott Brick just put out.
Wow.
That'd be the version I prefer to listen to because I don't necessarily enjoy all the multi voices in it. For some reason, that just doesn't hit me. So
I think I would find that distracting.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not seeing any version. I would love if you can send it in. I would love to see a link where you have that Scott Brick did narrate it because I'd like to see if I can go find that somewhere. But anyways,
I read the Dune book previously, and I did have the version that he's talking about as being distracting, and I didn't find myself distracted. I guess because I already knew the story.
Well, and it's I mean, the story is compelling. I wouldn't have said that it's like, oh, we're going here again. It's going to keep me from enjoying the book. It didn't, but it was. I didn't notice it, and I guess when I'm hearing narrators, I kind of expect them to kind of bleed into the background, and my focus really should be the story. But anyways, that's my thoughts on it.
Moving right along. Number 4, here's a tip for you and your listeners. Here in Michigan, we have a statewide library system via the internet. The Michigan E-Library Exchange at www.mel.org, where library card holders can search the catalogs of all of the associated libraries and can many times request an item from a far-off library. The item is then delivered to their home library, and then they receive an email notice to pick it up. Listeners of your podcast may find a similar system in their state if they wish to check out the Dune Saga paper books, audiobooks, movie, or miniseries. There is also Overdrive, which is a service that libraries subscribe to more or less by county. And you can check out and download an audiobook right to your smartphone. Or if you don't have a smartphone, you download it to your computer and then load it onto your digital audio device. When the title expires, the files are automatically deleted. Since it varies by county, the available titles will also vary by county. I can tell you right here in Nebraska, we have such a system. I make use of it for my daughter quite often. So our library does that.
Well, we have it here where you can pull from all the other libraries, but some of them are just starting to get the digital stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I just did a search. Lancaster Library does have Overdrive as well, the area that we're in, and they do have Dune.
Oh,
but
cool.
just Dune.
Just Dune.
Just Dune. So none of the others, none of the other titles. So
cool. Cool.
All right, so we move on.
Number 5. Regarding computer games, there is a type of gaming video on YouTube called Let's Play, where the video maker records themselves playing and usually giving commentary a computer game. There are videos for at least several, if not all, of the Dune computer games. Fans may like to watch a few of them to get a feel of what each of the games were and are like if they can't find any to buy on eBay or etc.
You know what I would be interested in? Go ahead, Jim.
I wasn't aware that there were Dune games.
Oh yeah, there's a couple Dune games out. What I'd be interested in doing is watching to see not only how they play, but I would be interested in seeing if they add to the story, flesh out the story, or just allow you to play a character within the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, this is something I've thought about. I actually watch a lot of Let's Play videos. It's like what I do instead of radio. Sometimes I just put them on in the background. I have been thinking about trying to contact some of the Let's Players that I like to see if they would want to play Dune, or if I could find the games somewhere for them to play. I'll probably look up and see who's done it and maybe see what's up with there, and then maybe if they'd want to talk about it or whatever for us. So
right, it would be great to have maybe just a little vignette or a little short interview with them.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Since we probably won't review the games in the show.
No, I don't think so.
But, all right, and going on.
Number 6, penultimately, I ran across this next item last month in a box of things my brother gave me. See the attached files.
I will.
1997. Okay. In 1997, there was a Dune customizable card game CCG created. I don't know how successful it was, and we never played it. But because of the success of Magic the Gathering, nearly everyone was creating a CCG for their properties in the mid to late 1990s.
And he did send pictures, pretty good pictures of it, and I will post them probably on Facebook.
I would love to see those pictures. That's kind of cool. That is kind of cool.
Okay. Post them on our Facebook page. I do know that Babylon 5 had game cards, and I just happened to have one that was signed by the actor who played Londo Mollari. That was kind of neat.
Whoa.
Okay, number 7. And lastly and finally, for my listener feedback to you, I found some outstanding Dune fan artwork on DeviantArt. You may find this the most interesting of all items I write to you about. Like the card game, I always see peripheral artwork for novels to be extremely helpful to me when imagining the characters and scenes. It helps me immerse myself in the story much more deeply. And he provides 4 links, which I will put in our show notes before we release the show. And it says, my favorite illustration by Demos Remus is Princess Irulan. I sort of regularly fall for the princess / heroine in movies and novels, although whether that is justified for Irulan in the Dune universe, I can't say yet. May the spice be with you, Bill from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I would agree. Looking at the picture, Irulan's there.
I think I've seen these pictures posted somewhere before, if I'm not mistaken. Did he put these on our page? Our Facebook page?
Not that I know of.
I don't know. I don't think these ones. We've
the
similar ones.
The Irulan one, not.
Yeah. Max Nolan is one of the deviant artists that I've posted stuff from, so maybe you came across it from his things or something. But
yeah,
thanks for writing, Bill.
Yeah,
that was a lot of cool things to talk about,
and neat angles and stuff that we haven't talked about in listener feedback. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool. Well, our next email comes from Luke Bowles. I hope I'm saying that right. This is more of a somber email that he wrote us that definitely meant a lot to me to get. So bear with me as we go through this one. I just wanted to send a quick note to. I just wanted to send a quick note on how these. Gosh, I can't read.
You can't even get through it.
I know.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to send a quick note on how you 3 gentlemen, with your podcast, Frank Herbert, Brian Herbert, and Kevin J. Anderson, brought my father and I closer while he was dying of cancer. My father was a big reader. It helped him pass the lonely time he had on ship while he served in the Navy for 25 years. I, too, am a huge reader. Until the last few months, I believed my father only read books on history and politics. During one conversation, not long after we found that he only had a few months left, I mentioned that I was reading Dune. He lit up. He started telling me all that he loved about the Frank Herbert novels and asked if I had read the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson books. I rolled my eyes and told him no. We had a good heart argument over it. He then pulled up your podcast, and over the next few weeks, your podcast and my father convinced me to give the newer Dune novels a try. I was really surprised. My father and I started to read them together. We read and discussed the books together and listened to your podcast and debated amongst ourselves points you three would bring up. Sadly, my father passed away a few weeks ago. It still feels unreal. But I only want but I only want to, but
I not only want to.
But I not only want to, but I have to thank all of you. Due to your podcast and all the Dune novels, my father and I grew even closer over the last few months of his life. It kept our mind off what we knew was going to happen, and I grew to understand my father more than I thought I ever would. I am now going to read the books in order with a new appreciation and fond memories of my dad. Thank you so much, Luke Bowles.
I don't know how you respond to that, because that's just, certainly feel honored to be a part in that whole process. And I just think it's awesome that the books were a way for you and your father to grow closer together and to dialogue about topics and ideas that it just opened up a conversation between the two of you. And for my part, I'm glad we could be a part of that.
Yeah, me too.
Jim, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Luke, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd like to say that it really humbles me to know that we actually do reach people in this way. And it gives a lot of meaning to what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that I don't hear that happening very many times in podcasting. And we get certainly an enjoyment out of it and entertainment value, but when it goes to that, when it transcends to that level, it's neat. And you know what? I just appreciate you being willing to share that.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. We just want you to know that you definitely it touched us to know that we could have been a part of your story.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's move on. So Scott, this is me, I guess, who's reading this email. That's why I said Scott at the top of the note. I don't know why I'm reading that. This is from Naomi on Dune Messiah. And dear David, Scott, and Jim, I just finished reading Dune Messiah for such a short book. It took me a whole month to finish. All the plotting and devious planning put me to sleep almost every night in September. It was only until I reached about the halfway point that the story picked up and I was able to finish quickly. The lack of gruesome details on the death of Mohiam and Edric was disappointing. See, they wanted Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert writing this. So they had more of the gruesomeness. Perhaps reading so many Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson books made me a little twisted for wanting detailed descriptions of how they were both put to an end. I felt so invested in these two characters who are usually the ones who put me to sleep. I wanted a firsthand account of how they died. This was the second time I read Dune Messiah. I forgot most of the storyline, but remembered that I enjoyed my first read very much. The parts I liked most was Duncan giving Aaliyah the kiss that she wanted and the love affair that began at the end of Dune Messiah. Another part I enjoyed, and we didn't talk about that love affair, by the way. Another part I enjoyed in the book was when the twins were held at knife point by Skytail. Paul remained composed to see through the baby Leto's eyes and kill Skytail while the face dancer was bargaining for Chinese flesh. Although Paul could have been confused because he didn't predict the birth of a boy and was communicating with his conscious child, he was able to approach Skytail with stealth and to sink his crisp knife into Skytail's skull through his eyeball. Executing that feat is a good example of Paul's expertise with the Bene Gesserit training, and that scene alone was worth all the effort I put into reading this book. Kind of agree with him there. I'm excited to go back to Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's book and read Winds of Dune. A reread of Children of Dune is welcoming, and I'm looking forward to finally finishing God Emperor. I started reading God Emperor of Dune a long time ago, but never finished because I was drawn into the House Atreides book and the Prelude series. And after reading House Atreides, I never had any desire to finish God Emperor. I'm sure I'll get through it so I can keep up with the podcast. Thanks for the inspiration, Naomi. P.S. I'd like to know more about your podcast opening theme music and the lovely voice that recites the litany. Right. So let me, I guess, quickly talk about that first. So the voice of the opening is M. Sierra Garcia, who is a co-host for the Dune Saga podcast. So she voices that. And that is the main thing there.
Co-host for the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.
What did I say?
You said Dune Saga podcast.
Okay, I know. I'm sorry for the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Thank you for correcting
She's
me.
a really silent host on the Dune Saga podcast.
Which would be unusual. Which would be unusual for Em. I mean, come on. If you know Em, she's not that silent. If you want to hear more of Em, go to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast and listen to some episodes. You'll hear her as a co-host on our show. The music is from the Celestial Aeon Project, and if you go to the Dune Saga podcast page, .com page, if you scroll down the sidebar, you will actually see a link to the original music unaltered.
And it's free.
It is free. That you can download for free, and the track is called "The Saga Begins" from the album Fable. So by the Celestial Aeon Project. So that's where those two things come from. Just to talk about that off the cuff. Let's go back into her email. What do you think about some of the things that she is saying here?
I'd like to make a comment on the death of Mohiam Edric and even Korba. It had been so long, I remembered their deaths being worse. And I think it's only because I love Children of Dune, the miniseries, so much. So their imagination, Naomi, I don't know if you've seen the miniseries, but Stilgar kills Mohiam with a crysknife. He just walks in and kills her, cuts her throat or something. A bunch of Fedaykin go to Edric and smash his bowl open so the gas leaks out and he suffocates. They use a prostitute to trick Korba to find out where he is, and they put him in they distill him alive.
That's right.
They reclaim his water alive.
Those are some pretty horrible deaths.
Yeah.
But they aren't really described. She's right. They aren't really described in the detail that Kevin J. Anderson.
In the book, they just say she took care of it after Paul walked away. In the movie, there's a beautiful song and montage where it's all happening simultaneous and awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What do you think about the death of Skytail?
It's a good scene.
It is a good scene.
It's a good scene.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Jim?
Well, I've never seen Children of Dune, so I can't comment to a lot of that. Reading it in the book, I guess it worked for me. Seemed a little far-fetched, but that I guess that's the nature of prescience.
Right. Yeah.
Roland commented in the chat, spoiler alert, but we're talking about Children of Dune. The first 2 hours of the miniseries is Dune Messiah. So we're not going into the actual Children of Dune storyline. The
events we're talking about happen
in Dune Messiah. And that's the first quarter of the miniseries. Yeah. So
all right, Jim, why don't you go into Max Nolan on the Dune miniseries review?
Okay, and Max says, nice review, guys. It's hard for me to judge the miniseries without the nostalgia factor. My favorite part of it, by far, is the casting for the Baron. I think that guy was flawless.
I gotta agree. I mean, the rhyming was dumb in the first one,
right?
But I love him as
Baron.
Baron.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. I like the rhyming thing. It reminded me of Muhammad Ali.
That's right. You should say that. That's right.
Yes, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Baron
is going to knock you to your knees. No, I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot. So now we have Jim, poet, lute player. It's great.
Yeah.
David, go ahead.
Renaissance man. I'm a Renaissance man.
Oh.
Well, our next email is from Roland Smoker on Dune Messiah. Hi, David, Scott, and Jim. I enjoyed reading Dune Messiah immensely. However, I did not find it as poetic or epic as Dune. This was at first a disappointment to me, but I quickly came to realize that I feel this book fits much better with Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's books. My biggest complaint would be that there were several times when I felt there was too much dialogue, especially towards the beginning of the book. My favorite aspect of this book is the transformation of hate to Duncan, Idaho. Also, I appreciate Paul of Dune more after reading Dune Messiah. The references to the Tylexu Kwisatz Haderach and Dune Messiah had more of an impact knowing the specifics of that situation. I give Dune Messiah a 4 out of 5. That is something we didn't talk about. I felt that Dune Messiah was enriched by Paul of Dune.
Yeah, very true. We got some background. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, small things that they just kind of mentioned in passing. You're like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even when they're talking about how big the Citadel is. Like, I just kept thinking about the designs that
because you saw it kind of built.
Had done. So,
yeah. What any comments, Jim, on this?
Well, it was really neat to see that Roland and I are on the same page as far as the rating. 4 out of 5.
You guys are 2 peas in a pod. I heard Roland was taking up the loot.
Yeah, that's right. He's gonna
he's a Renaissance man too. Okay.
Yeah. This complaint that there was too much dialogue, man. When you read through, when we get to like the Goodreads bad reviews, it's a common complaint.
Yeah.
Too much telling, not enough showing, not enough description of telling. I mean, so that is an issue. That is an issue. I would agree with it. But he's with me on the transformation of hate to Duncan, Idaho. One of my favorite parts of the book. I've seen that happen.
And then having Duncan back, that's a little creepy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, I mean, it's kind of at the beginning. It's kind of weird, but I kind of like it. I almost like this Duncan better than all the Duncan we've known in the past.
Well, only for me, it's only if you take Duncan just from Dune. But if you take the Duncan we've gotten in the House books, I love Duncan in the House books.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
I'm on the House books.
One of the things that bothers me about it is the axolotl tanks, and how Duncan came back to be. I mean, does anybody in the Dune universe other than the Thylax understand how that works?
No, this is one of the things that I heard talking about that before is that in Frank Herbert's books, it's not till several books from now till we find out what they are.
Right.
But Brian Herbert and Kevin G. Anderson kind of give it away.
Right.
Which destroys the mystery.
Right.
You wonder about you just at this point in time, if you were reading, you would just assume it was just some sort of tank.
Right.
And even in the miniseries, they just show it as a tank.
Right.
I mean, the very fact that they refer to women as tanks is just creepy to me anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is going to be one of those things where you'll be pining for the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson descriptions when we get to it,
right?
Because it's not a good description of what is going on there,
right?
So,
right. Yep. All right. Well, let's move on. And thanks, Roland, for writing in. Scott Thompson wrote this to Jim, Scott, and David. I just started reading the original Dune series this year, and I'm currently reading God, Emperor of Dune, and loving the audiobooks. I'm currently working on a cruise liner, so I feel isolated from the mainland and don't know anyone else who has read the book, so I'm really enjoying your great podcast episodes. The podcast isn't just a great companion to the series, but has helped enrich the stories for me. Well done. The only problem I have is, as I mentioned, I'm listening to the audiobooks. Over here in the UK, iTunes and Audible, the only original series and Paul of Dune are available. I really love to listen to the Legends and Prelude of Dune series, especially after hearing your podcast. Oh, well, I guess I'll have to order the books. Bugger. Keep on the good work. And from Scott all the way over the pond in England. So thanks, Scott, for writing in.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's just copyright, audio copyright, and what's limited and not limited. There's music that's available over here that's not there, and vice versa. So
I mean, there's always this special power of friendship internet thing that I keep hearing about, but I don't condone.
Well, you don't condone peer-to-peer
sharing
networks download.
I'm just saying it exists.
BitTorrent.
BitTorrent.
Yeah. Not that I would ever do that.
I've never witnessed it or anything.
Not that I would have watched some video.
Not that I download Downton Abbey while it's airing in England
or
and not in
Legend
America.
of Korra.
Or Legend of Korra.
Anyways, no, I appreciate you, and I'm glad that we can be a companion to you on the cruise ship. We're on a cruise. Did you guys know that we're on a cruise?
Oh my goodness, I didn't really realize I was on vacation. I didn't get a tan.
Right, obviously. Jim, any thoughts on what he said?
I kind of blacked out there on you for a couple of minutes, so I didn't catch everything.
Okay.
So I think I'll reserve any remarks.
Yeah. Okay, that's the problem.
Well, that's all right. He's really just being distracted by Green Bay right now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hey man,
28-0.
You have a reason to be distracted then. All right, Jim, why don't you go ahead with Joseph Fuller's email on the Dune miniseries?
Okay, Joseph says, sadly, I am playing catch-up. Plus, I am picking my shows. Laughing out loud, I am trying to reread and read the books. The miniseries I loved for the start. I own both DVDs. I would call, but I can type more. Laugh out loud. I felt the miniseries was a lot closer to the books. The start of the movie and the end are the same or close to the same as the books. I agree with some of your thoughts, and I disagree with some of your thoughts too. Laugh out loud. I am one of those who likes both the Sci-Fi Channel, I refuse to type that stupid spelling, laugh out loud, and Lynch's Dune.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to applaud you for not typing SYFI.
Well, you don't like the Syfy channel?
Syfy channel?
Yeah, the syphilis channel.
So that they can show more wrestling.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I have a very specific definition of what is and isn't science fiction, and I don't want to open that can of worms again. But I think it's appropriate that they call themselves sci-fi rather than sci-fi, because a lot of what they show isn't sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's the new branding fits their shows, but you lament the loss of the actual Sci-Fi Channel when it was more sci-fi.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, next we have up Josh Stetz on the Dune miniseries. Love the miniseries. So much better than the Lynch movie, in my version. So much better than the Lynch version, in my opinion. Better casting, better storytelling, since Yet had 6 hours to work with. Since they had 6 hours to work with instead of 2 or 3. And I do even have to mention no weirding modules.
Yes.
I really like how they did the blue within blue eyes. I think that Scott and I are on board with you. I don't know about Jim, though.
Rick definitely is not.
No.
Yeah. We know it's I think most of us would agree that we were happy that the weirding modules are not there.
Yeah, for sure.
So
they had no place in it, no matter which version you're watching.
Yeah.
So
Matthias on this is regarding last month's poll. I wonder who chose Yui.
Yeah, there was a couple people who chose Yui as a companion.
I think there was like one person.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Probably someone who doesn't know what a lute is.
Definitely. It has to be that.
Yeah. It was the guy who did the set design.
Right.
For that movie.
Right.
So.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, it says Paul Tate on the themes of Dune. Opinion. It is a crucial look at how power corrupts even those who have been educated and prepared for leadership for years on end. The decision to make Dune about humans and not the Paul character was extraordinary. It did nonetheless make the 1965 Dune appear to be a warning. Frank Herbert displayed the dangers of power on those given it, and as they can become corrupted, as happened to Paul. I agree. Okay. With endless power and consequences can serve, which is what makes Dune Messiah so impressive. Paul is ultimately doing what he thinks is best for humanity, while the other key groups like the Bene Gesserit are self-interested. It offers a reflection for human relations and global politics. Is our system of democracy assumed ideal without thought? Paul's exile into the desert came after he had killed billions. Even the chosen can be tyrants. The ability to see into the future could not save lives. Paul's leaving was, to me, his apology to humanity. Currently reading Winds of Dune for the first time. I feel thus far that it is the best read after finishing the others and not before Children of Dune. Keep up the great work. From Brazil.
Awesome. Well, thanks for writing it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I can't wait to talk about Winds of Dune and see if I agree or disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I do. Paul leaving was his apology to humanity. That's a great line.
Yeah, I think that is too. I mean, I don't think I thought of it as that way, as an apology, as more as just like an escape, like his way out. But,
well, can't both be true?
Yeah, I think they can. I think they can.
Both can
but
be true.
Thought of them.
Yeah.
Alexander Blackburn on Jim's meme. If you missed it, we posted on Facebook and Twitter. Great meme of Jim says, "You guys really need to turn that photo into a T-shirt. So funny." And I think Jim is just waiting to bust out as this like internet sensation T-shirt guy.
Yep.
I see it in his future.
Definitely.
I'll tell you what, David, with you as my agent, I think that will happen.
It's just a matter of time.
That's right. T-shirts. I guess chat room and listeners, would you buy a T-shirt if we put that on a T-shirt?
If we put Jim's meme on a T-shirt.
Yeah, if you put it on, if you're interested, we'll go for that.
You can make it
I'd buy 2 or 3 of them.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. So
gold, right? Already gold already.
Cafe Press. But.
Well, we had a little role switch this month, where I feel like I might have given you an easy one. Usually, I'm doing the bad reviews and pouring through the.
There were plenty of bad reviews for this one.
Yeah, which makes it too easy because they weren't just the same Kevin J. Anderson, Brian Herbert complaints.
That's still in here, by the way.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So.
Well, this month Scott took up the bad reviews, so let's see what he has to say.
All right. So this first bad review, and I didn't just pull them from Goodreads. I pulled them from a couple other places. But the first one comes from a lady named Melissa. And she says this is a book with a sci-fi setting, but some of the plot may be borrowed from the 1960s soap opera. Family intrigues, pregnancies, overdoses, and who's plotting to kill who. There's also a lot of semi-philosophical debate about the motives and morals, that no one seems to have good motives or any morals. And as commonly happens in books where no one has any ideals or character, the tone is very hopeless. I did notice that many of the time colors of clothing or rooms are described, and I see a Brady Bunch color scheme. A lot of green, gold, and orange. I was irritated at the lack of protagonists to cheer for and relate to. No one in this book is lovable. Herbert did paint on a rather epic canvas multiple civilizations, planetary differences, and newborn religion, and an assassination plots. She gave it 1 star. So it wasn't totally trashing it, but not loving this book.
Yeah, I get that there's no straight protagonist to rally behind. I'm going to say in defense of the book, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
That Frank was trying to get across. There is no clear good person in this mistake of a path.
Yeah.
So
Roger writes, 1-star review. Since Dune is my favorite book, you might think that the second book of Dune, the original series, would be a favorite as well. Bzz, sorry, wrong answer. Nothing could be further from the truth. I cannot remember a series where so much promise and so much, dare I say, brilliance turned into a complete and utter pile of horse beep in the very next book. Actually, I must apologize to horse fecal matter. It doesn't deserve to be compared to Dune Messiah. Do yourself a favor, read Dune, stay away from all the other Dune books, especially those made by his son, Brian Herbert.
This even involved Brian, and he just drug him in.
You just drug him right in there. He's not the only one either. Jim, any thoughts in this?
Oh my goodness! Comparing everything except for Dune to Horsebucky, I can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't agree with that, of course, because I do love these books. I don't know. It's a little harsh.
Yeah, definitely. Again, these are all 1-star reviews. Christopher writes, this remains my least favorite of Frank Herbert's Dune books. Just to be clear, I'm not including the debacle of the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson books in this statement. The introduction by Brian Herbert is very defensive about how people dislike this book because it discredits the Messiah figure of Paul. I have no problem with discrediting Paul whatsoever. What makes this book suffer is that it's about 5% plot and 95% plotting and boring philosophical discussion. In the same introduction, this book is explained as the necessary bridge between Dune and Children of Dune, which I disagree with strongly. This entire novel could have been condensed into a few pages of Irulian history at the beginning of Children of Dune, and that would have served much better. Thankfully, the series improves from here, with the exception of those by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. Atrocities.
Oh my gosh! This poor guys. They cannot get a break.
They can't.
I'll tell you what. I think that he's, in some ways, he's right, but I almost view this as maybe Frank didn't know. We'll have to ask. Maybe he didn't know where he wanted to go, and this was just like.
Didn't Brian talk about this in the interview a little bit?
I can't remember.
I have to go back and re-listen to it. But
yeah. Thoughts, Jim?
Well, you know something. There's going to be people who dislike things. When I look at the reviews on Goodreads, which I haven't done recently, but they're usually the reviews for Brian and Kevin's books are most generally 85% positive.
Yes.
Well, and I would say the same for Messiah here.
Mm-hmm.
Same for Dune Messiah. True.
Yeah. And I don't know. Now we're trashing Frank Herbert too. And just, you know, there's going to be people out there you just cannot please. On the one comment, though, when they start talking about philosophy, and yeah, these books are very philosophical. They're intended to make people think.
Yeah.
That's what philosophy is about. It's about thinking. So, you know, if you don't want to think, don't read it. You know, go pick up some other fluff. Go get what do you call it? The Twilight series or something. Then you don't have to think. They'll do all your thinking for you.
Yeah, it's true.
Matthias said it here in the chat. He says Dune was a hero story. Messiah was the opposite. The dangers of following a charismatic leader. Frank was making a point, but maybe he failed to get it across in a good way.
Yeah. You know, I remember what Brian said when we interviewed him, Brian, because we're on a first name basis. But he said, you know, even his father couldn't measure up to Dune.
Yeah.
So no matter, in some way, while I agree that there are points in the book as far as the way the plot moves forward that aren't as strong as a lot of the other Dune books I've read so far, that almost nothing that Frank would have done to follow up with Dune would have matched Dune.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's that part of it.
You know, and I can understand why Brian said that. Let's take a look at Richard Wagner, who was an absolute horrible person, but the music was incredible that he composed. Beethoven had a great many problems. And again, another, you know, awesome music, the best in the world. There's a lot of precedent for that in history where the works speak louder than the people.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
I have 2 more bad reviews I'm going to read, and then we can begin to wrap up the show, if that's good.
Cool.
All right. So this next one is from Aaron. First Dune book was a page turner in spite of its flaws. There were flaws in Dune? Okay. No, I actually stayed up late on a couple of occasions because I couldn't put it down. Dune Messiah builds on all the weaknesses of Dune and discards everything that made his first book interesting. About halfway through, I wanted to just stop reading and find out how the book ends by looking it up on Wikipedia. That desire persisted even up to the end of the book. Save yourself the effort and steer clear of Dune Messiah. I doubt I'll ever be desperate enough to read the next book in the Dune series. I would recommend this story to Frank Herbert and anyone else on death row. People who truly deserve this type of punishment.
What?
Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
Yeah. Death row.
I'd recommend this book only to the person who wrote it.
That's right.
And people who are going to die.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. One more. And this one's from Thomas. And this is a part of a longer review. And so I excerpted it, and he was writing for a website, and I forget, some sci-fi review website. It says this: Dune Messiah is much shorter than Dune, at times brisker, but its narrative often meanders in the way Dune's never did. The actors in the conspiracy are at cross purposes in many ways, which will help Paul outmaneuver them, yet at times it's hard to make sense of their actions. Most of the clear motivations come from the Bene Gesserit, who are determined to recover genetic lines lost to the selective breeding program when Paul, after becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, immediately became their enemy and took the Fremen girl of Chani as his true wife. Paul tries to cut a deal with them, mostly to save Chani's life, as she's in the Bene Gesserit's crosshairs, by which he will agree to bear the child with Aurelian, herself a Bene Gesserit, but only through artificial insemination, and the child will not be named heir to the throne. Meanwhile, among the conspirators are another new order, the Bene Tlaxu, who have some pretty incredible talents of their own. Their plan involves being called a Gola named Hate, who is in fact the revived Duncan Idaho, killed defending Paul of Dune. There's also the Tlaxu face dancer named Skytail, who can alter his appearance to that of anyone and intends to infiltrate Paul's household in that way. There are just heaps and heaps of plot here, but far too much for the book, and the telling is simply dull. It would be nice to know a bit more about how the universe changed in the intervening 12 years. How did the Bene Tlaxu arise, let alone develop the skills to raise the dead and create face dancers? Missing pieces like this led to the publication in 2008 of Paul of Dune, which filled the gap between the books. Skytail at one point even mentions, as casually as you might have mentioned having a baked cake, that the Bene Tlaxu have bred their own Kwisatz Haderach, but nothing is made of this in the story. Mostly the problem with Dune Messiah is that we have a much weaker connection to the characters. The only real interesting people here are Paul's sister, now a teenage Aaliyah, and Hate Duncan Idaho clone, who wrestles with its identity and memories, and far less of stake in the outcome, which seems inevitable anyways. It isn't until we near the climax that Herbert reawakens some of his storytelling mojo and brings to the book something of an emotionally stirring conclusion, with a haunting final image of Paul walking alone into the deep desert. On that image, Herbert might have be well advised to bring the saga to a close, but you can't keep a good god down, nor would it seem a lucrative. So not totally negative, but he's kind of saying there are some problems with this.
Yeah. I mean,
he gave this 2 stars out of 5.
I think he was I agreed with some of the things he was saying. So
yeah. You agreed with the 2-star review. So.
For sure.
Yeah. Any thoughts on what he said, Jim?
Not really. I think he was quite fair. He found some things he liked and some things he didn't like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that about does it. Do we have anything else we need to do? That's it, right?
It brings us to the end. We want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you for sending in all this great feedback. Great.
And thank you to the chat room for joining us and sticking with us here tonight and dialoguing and have some great conversations in their own.
Yeah. I looked over a couple times and I was like, I can't even follow because I have to concentrate on what we're doing.
Yeah, there's some parts that just made me laugh.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and read it. If you want to be a part of that conversation, dunesagapodcast.com/live is where you can join the chat room when we're recording, and the dates and time was located on the main page on the side there, the calendar. If you want to contribute your thoughts, there are several ways that you can do that. You can email us at dunesagapodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Dune Saga Podcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/dunesagapodcast. And if you want to be one of the great people who sends us voicemails, you can do so by either emailing it directly as an MP3 file or calling our voicemail line, which is 1-260-577-CHAT. That's 1-260-577-2428. And if you don't want to remember that number, you can download the Zogpod Collective app,
which we are a part of.
Yeah, which
Yep.
we are a part of. And right in there, you'll find the you can just click a button and your phone will dial right into the hotline, and you can leave your voice there. Also, if you feel like contributing financially to the show, you can do so by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Dune Saga Podcast, or follow the links on our page. And you can see many different kinds of perks that you could be a part of there if you decide to be a part of that. So, for the Dune Saga Podcast, I'm David Moulton.
I am Scott Herzog.
And I'm Jim Arrowwood. And may Shai Hulud clear the path before you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, chat room. Again, want to thank you, post show here, for joining us tonight. We are going to sign out and wrap up, and we'll see you in about a month. We'll have to set a date off air here, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool. Thanks again, guys.
Yep, very good. Hey, Jim, thanks for joining us tonight, and glad we were able to have a pretty good connection. Although it sounded like we blacked out from your end a little bit.
Or he was watching.
Yeah, it was my end. I've got my service is having troubles again apparently the last couple of days. So
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Enjoy that football.
Yep.
Oh yeah, 20-0. The second half's about to start. Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey,
All
we will
right.
catch you, chat room, and Jim, we will see you.
All right.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'll be watching for you.